I've actually uploaded the slides for the previous topics, and also the regulation, the pre-recorded slide on regulation. I just uploaded it just before the class just now. All right, so that later on you can refer to these slides for your revision. Okay. So today, inshallah, we will complete the last topic. Inshallah, we'll try and complete it by today. All right. It is not so difficult, right? Because it's related to the theories that can be used for corporate governance. Okay. So we will start looking at these theories now. Just give me 1 second, please. Oops. All right. So can you see the slides?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, actually, you are already familiar with two of these theories. Okay. All right. So we will go through this and quite quickly. And if you have any questions, you can just ask the question. Okay. So the theories of corporate governance is important, all right, because it helps to kind of remind about the responsibilities and the role of corporate governance. And also, these theories help to basically show the reasons why sometimes problems in relation to corporate governance exists. All right. So, two theories that you are already familiar with are agency theory and stakeholder theory. Agency theory you have seen a few times, all right, because we have this. I think basically you have discussed it when you did your auditing, right? If you have done your FAR 5 as well, agency theory pops up in FAR 5, and today we're going to just review it quickly again. All right. And stakeholder theory, we have seen stakeholder theory when we discussed about the company's responsibility towards the community, society, and the environment as well, right? So we have talked about stakeholder theory before. Okay, so we will review these, and also there are, I think, maybe two additional theories that we will discuss, right? But very briefly. Okay, so agency theory, again, you know that basically agency theory is related to the relationship between principal and agents, right? And generally, the main idea is corporate governance problems exist because managers have their own self interests. Therefore, shareholders appoint or elect and delegate authority to directors to represent them. Okay, to represent the shareholders' interests and also to monitor management. Okay. And then the board of directors, in turn, appoint a management team, right? Senior managers to manage the daily operations of the company and make the key decisions, all right, in relation to allocating resources in the company, right? So generally, the board of directors are the ones who will actually appoint the management team in order to run the business. So, if you look at it in general, all right, therefore, the senior management or the managers or top management can be considered as indirect agents of shareholders, right? Because shareholders appoint directors, directors appoint the top management. So, indirectly, the top management is an agent of the shareholders, all right? Okay. Right? So, of course, the shareholders expect the directors to do their jobs effectively, all right? And that's why these directors, the controllers, they enjoy or they get a very lucrative remuneration package so that they are motivated to do their job effectively and protect the shareholders, right? However, there is a difference between the directors who own shares and the directors who do not own shares. So, for the directors or the controllers who do not own shares, they may focus on short term profits, all right, to show that they are performing well, all right, at least in the short term. And based on that, they are trying to maximize their own remuneration, right? Their bonuses and so on, right? Whereas for the directors or the controllers who own shares, so they are also shareholders, then they will behave differently and they will be more in line with shareholders' interests because shareholders want long term success of the company, right? So they want the company or the directors to come up with new investments which will promote the long term growth and survival of the company. All right. So, if the company fails, however, then these controllers or directors they lose less compared to the shareholders, right? Because basically they are just there to, especially the directors who are maybe independent, supposedly independent directors, all right, if companies fail because they have their own agenda, then basically they can just move on to other companies, all right, or they have already got their remuneration and so on, right? So they do not have to be so concerned, right? Managers, they may lose their employment, but they can look for new jobs, right? But shareholders are the ones who will lose their investment, right? So this is the issue. And generally, shareholders are part of the public. There are, of course, institutional shareholders. So, institutional shareholders may be more aware, right, and may be more protected against company failure. But if it is individual shareholders who are investing their excess money instead of putting in the bank, they have put it in investment of a company that seems stable, right, for their retirement and so on. So if the company fails, then these shareholders lose everything basically, right? So this is the issue, right? So there is this problem of agency conflict, where basically agency conflict is when the interests of the shareholders are different from the interests of the managers, or basically the interests of the managers differ from the interests of the shareholders. Okay, so if this agency conflict occurs, basically if the managers and the directors, if they are behaving opportunistically, then generally the shareholders will lose out because they will lose their wealth, all right, and the value of the shares, okay, will decline. So this is the issue if there is agency conflict. So what happens is the shareholders and even the company incur costs, right? Called agency costs, to basically try and monitor management and align the interests of managers and directors to make sure that they are in line with the interests of the shareholders. However, of course, this monitoring is time consuming and costly, all right, but whatever it is, the company established, sometimes it is the company themselves, especially good companies, they will show the shareholders, the owners of this company, that there are control mechanisms to ensure that the managers as well as the directors are behaving uh, in line with the shareholders' interests, right? So, although the mechanisms are there, the control mechanisms are there, of course, we are aware that it is impossible to eliminate every opportunistic behavior of the managers or the directors. All right. So, but as mentioned, the corporate governance mechanisms, for example, internal control mechanisms, are there in order to ensure that the shareholders' rights and interests are protected within the company. Okay. Okay, now what we are aware about, and we have discussed about this later, sorry, we have discussed about this previously, that in Malaysia, basically, there is concentrated ownership in the companies, all right? So, concentrated ownership, as you know, is that an individual or a family, all right, or government institutions are the ones that own the substantial portion of the shares of that company, right? So a majority shares, right, are owned by either an individual or a family or the government. Okay, so this concentrated ownership occurs in Malaysia, all right, and the issue is when family ownership occurs, because many of our listed companies are still owned by families, all right? So these families will, of course, have a tighter control on the company to ensure that the company survives for longer, uh, uh, a longer period, right? Continues to survive, right? So because they are basically the directors as well as owners of the company. So directors, management, and owners of the company, all in one, basically, right? In terms of family ownership. Okay. So there is this two types of agency problem. All right. The type one agency problem is the original agency problem, where there could be a conflict between the owners, all right, who are the shareholders, and the managers, who are the agents. All right. So when this conflict occurs, this is type one agency problem. However, in this agency problem has been extended to type 2 agency problem, right? Because there is also a possibility of conflict between the principal and the principal. Not only the principal and the agent, all right, in like as in type 1, but the principal and the principal, all right, under type 2 agency problem. Right? Because there could still be a conflict between the majority shareholders, right? So the large shareholders, for example, family shareholders, and the minority shareholders, right? So the family may be thinking about the family, right? And the taking investments which are more long term, right? Or they may be considering retaining profits. Sorry, they may be considering paying out less dividends to retain the profits within the company, so that these profits, retained profits, can be used for the future, right? Future growth of that company. But the minority shareholders may not be happy about this, right? So there could be a conflict. So therefore, the non-executive directors, as well as, I think you will see in the regulation, the minority shareholders watchdog group is there to protect the interests of the minority shareholders. Okay. Now, in terms of the agency costs, basically there are three kinds of types of agency costs: monitoring costs, all right, bonding, and residual loss. All right. So monitoring costs is when the shareholders incur these costs in order to monitor management. So, for example, they have to pay the external auditors their fees, all right, so that the external auditors will audit the company, and they have to pay directors, right, particularly non-executive directors, the remuneration and compensation in order to monitor the executive directors. All right, so that is monitoring costs as part of agency costs. Then bonding costs. Bonding costs is basically where the company itself tries to assure the shareholders that they are that the shareholders' interests are actually protected and safeguarded. Right. So these bonding costs includes fees paid to non-executive directors and the external auditors. All right. So, but these are borne by the company. All right. And then basically the management spends time to talk to the shareholders in the AGM, and the directors spend time to meet with institutional shareholders and talk to them, right? To basically to assure that the shareholders' rights are being protected. And uh, there are also costs incurred in preparing quarterly financial reports, right, or interim reports, just to show or to provide shareholders timely performance reports, right, to show that the company is performing well. Okay. Then, in terms of residual loss, all right, this is still part of agency costs, because no matter of whether there is monitoring costs and bonding costs, sometimes there is still this difference between agents' decisions, the decisions that the managers take, and when it is not in line with the shareholders' interest, then there is still this residual loss. Okay, so or when directors misuse their power, their position, then again there is residual loss, because shareholders' interests are no longer protected, right? So this residual loss still occurs even though when they are monitoring costs and bonding costs. Okay, so these are the three agency costs. So generally, the solution to agency problem is to provide incentives, all right, to tie the the wealth, all right, or the compensation and remuneration of the management to be in line with the shareholders' wealth. So, for example, to give them share options and so on as part of their remuneration, right? So that their motivation will be the same, right? And the second one is, of course, to monitor, so to have auditors and corporate governance mechanisms in order to monitor management, right? So these are, that generally these are the main um, uh, possibilities of trying to resolve agency or reduce agency problems. Okay. However, there is a criticism against agency theory, right? Because generally the main assumption under agency theory, uh, because agency theory is from the economics theory, it's an economics a field, from the economics field. So basically, if you recall in economics, basically the idea is everybody is self-motivated, right? They are motivated to pursue their own self-interest, right? Including the managers. Okay, so all individuals are motivated by self-interest, right? Under economics. But if that were true, we know that um, things like charity will not occur, right? So we know that as human beings, as individuals, all right, we do not necessarily always pursue our self-interest, right? Because there are activities like charity and so on. So so basically, it challenges this agency theory that managers are always out for their own, or looking out for their own self-interest. So there, of course, in general, we can also see that managers work hard, all right, and they have no, they do not seem to be averse, right? They do not seem to go against working hard, putting in effort, because they also have their own reputation to protect, right? They want to be seen as good managers, right? And so generally, the issue to state that managers are motivated to behave on their behave for their own self-interest tends to be exaggerated, right? So this is the main criticism of agency theory. There are good managers out there, right? That's why companies are successful. Okay, so that's why, because of this criticism towards agency theory, later on you will see an alternative theory, which is stewardship theory. Okay, but before we go on to stewardship theory, let's move on to stakeholder theory first. Okay, now do you have any questions about agency theory? Any questions on agency theory? Are you okay so far?
Okay, madam.
Yes, madam.
All right,
Okay.
okay, fine. Okay, so if you have no questions, then let me proceed with stakeholder theory. Okay, so can you see the slides again?
Yes, madam.
All right, okay, fine. So, generally, the main idea of stakeholder theory is that stakeholders have an interest in companies' decisions, policies, and the actual practices of the company, because these stakeholders are affected by the company, and basically, the company is also affected by the stakeholders as well, right? So, generally, the main idea of stakeholder theory is that companies should take into consideration the stakeholders in making their decision. Okay, so here are some examples of corporate responsibility, all right, or failure to be responsible, all right. So you can see all these cases because the companies fail to consider the stakeholders. So, in terms of Enron, because management and top executive were involved with fraud, so generally when Enron collapsed, so all these their employees lost their jobs, all right, at Enron. Okay, then also Lehman Brothers, which is an investment bank. Okay, when they collapsed as well due to some very unethical decisions, then the investors lost their investment, all their investment in the bank, right? Then, in relation to Sunlu Corporation, basically they endangered the lives of babies, right? Because dangerous ingredients or hazardous ingredients were included or were part of the infant formula, baby formula, right? In the milk powder, right? So all these are cases of when companies fail to basically fail their stakeholders, right? So and unfortunately, there are cases in Malaysia as well. All right. So okay, uh, if you look at the cases uh, for U.S. banning, right, the import of palm oil from Sime Darby, from FGV Holdings, all right, okay, and also from Top Glove, right, gloves from Top Glove, all right. Um, do you know about this bans? Anyone saw it in the news or heard about it in the news?
No, madam.
Why do you think that these products were banned from our Malaysian companies? Why do you think US? ban imports from our Malaysian companies? All right, if you're not familiar, just go to Google and then you just type there US ban imports of palm oil, and then you will see why our products were banned. All right, so okay, then maybe in another class we can discuss about it if we want to discuss it. All right. Okay, but if anybody wants to, if anybody knows, you can just mention it here, then it avoids the basically raising this issue again in another class.
Is it because of forced labor, madam?
Sorry, I heard labor, but I didn't hear the first word. Because of
Forced,
forced
forced
labor.
labor.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. All right. Human rights abuse. Unfortunate, right? Unfortunate that apparently there are so, of course, because Sime Darby is like, for example, Sime Darby is a huge company, right? And they have palm oil estates not only in Malaysia, but it's also in other neighboring countries. All right. So of course, since they are the company, they have to be responsible on what goes around in their plantation, what happens in their plantation. So, but unfortunately, sometimes, especially when they're big companies, the management you have basically the company has to be responsible for the managers in those plantations. So the issue is, of course, we don't want Malaysian companies to be tied to, or the news linked to, having abusing human rights or having forced labor and all sort of basically unethical, all right, and unethical and inhumane uh, activities, right? We don't want to be, I mean, we don't want Malaysian companies to be tied to such news, right? So this is the issue. Right, so hopefully they correct all whatever is taking place in on these companies, right, and resolve this quickly. All right, of course we want Malaysian companies to be seen as the best, all right, not only consider it being profitable, but to take care of the community, all right, the stakeholders, including their employees, their workers, and so on, right? So we want Malaysian companies to be seen as the best, all right, the best. And if maybe not so profitable or not so rich, but at least in terms of good social and environmental concerns. Okay, so generally, stakeholder theory talks about broadening the accountability of the managers of the company to not only the shareholders but to other stakeholders as well. So the agency relationship is extended not only to protect the shareholders but also to protect other stakeholders as well. So the board of directors responsibilities have been extended, and generally the company cannot just consider maximizing their own wealth or the shareholders' wealth. They also have to think about the rights and responsibilities towards other stakeholders as well, right? It's the other stakeholders' rights. Okay. And we have seen these three perspectives of stakeholder theory before when we talked about um, um, this CSR, right? CSR in earlier topic in ethics, right? So there are these three perspectives. So if you recall, normative, descriptive, and instrumental. Normative talks about the ideal. So generally, the idea under stakeholder theory is that companies should deal with stakeholders ethically, and when they make their decisions, they have to take into consideration stakeholders views, or how it would their company's actions, how would these actions affect the stakeholders, right? So that is the normative perspective. For the descriptive perspective, descriptive is just describing. So here, under the descriptive perspective, it just describes how the companies are actually dealing with their various stakeholders. And basically, we know that since the stakeholders, they have their there are the primary stakeholders and the secondary stakeholders. So generally, the company would strategize and prioritize and try to meet the needs of the primary stakeholders first before meeting the needs of the secondary stakeholders. But all of this are described under the descriptive perspective, right? How the company is actually dealing with their stakeholders. Then, in the instrumental perspective, basically the company is aware that in order to meet the company goals, they have to treat the stakeholders responsibly. They have to keep the stakeholders happy. So generally, the managers will strategize and balance the cost and benefit. They'll try and optimize and try and meet the needs and the demands of the various stakeholders, right? So this is the instrumental perspective. Okay, do you have any questions up to this point? Are you okay?
Okay, madam.
All right, okay, fine. All right, so basically, all right, you can see that these are some of the stakeholders. Normally, we assume stakeholders to be the shareholders, all right, and perhaps the customers, but of course, they're also the creditors. They It's difficult to say, right, that they have no direct stake in the company, right? Perhaps the way to say it is that generally the main concern they have with the company is whether the company will be able to meet their the loan agreements, right? So this is more in terms of creditors and lenders, right? Whether the company is able to pay the lenders and the creditors back, right? Then, and for employees, the company's responsibility, right? We have seen this before. The company's responsibility is to ensure that there is safe and healthy working environment for their employees, right? The company or the factory or the plantation is a safe and healthy working environment for the employees, right? And the environment, of course, basically the company has to take measures to ensure the protection of the environment, right? So all these are under the stakeholder theory. Okay. Now, moving on to stewardship theory. So basically, as I mentioned before, stewardship theory generally came about um, since agency theory. Basically, there was criticisms towards agency theory, right? So this theory was introduced by Donaldson and Davis in 1991. All right, the main idea of this theory is there is no conflict of interest between managers and owners. Basically, both groups want to ensure that the company is successful, right? So generally this is the main idea. All right, so managers are not motivated to act for their own self-interest, right? They are not opportunistic. However, they are stewards, right? They have been entrusted uh, uh, by the owners of the company, all right, to manage the company. So they have this trust. So they have been entrusted, okay, to take care of the wealth of these owners, right? So a steward is someone who protects and takes care of the property or the wealth of the those who have appointed them, right? So in this case, if since the owners appointed them, so they are entrusted to take care of the wealth and the property of the owners, the shareholders, right? So so, following this theory, then the company's management will protect the interests of shareholders and will make decisions on behalf of the shareholders as well, right? So their sole objective is to create and maintain a successful organization, right? So that the company prospers, the shareholders prosper, and they also prosper, right? Because managers will be deemed to be good managers, right? So everyone is win-win for everybody. Okay, so in this situation, all right, basically we do not have to have the chairman, an independent chairman overseeing the board of directors. Instead, the executive, an executive will chair the board of directors. So part of management will chair the board of directors. All right, there can be a chairman. There can be a non-executive directors on the board, but mostly internal members would be the board members. So mostly executive directors will be board members, right? Because these internal directors, all right, those who are executive directors, they know mostly of about the company, right? Because they are internal, they know the company the best, right? So that's the reason why if these directors are, if these managers are actually fulfilling their stewardship role, then they know about the company the best, right? And they will make the best decisions on the board. Okay, so by having this executive director as the chairman as well, then basically it creates this one channel of communication. So basically, this executive, this leader, this chairman will communicate with the shareholders, and also the shareholders can communicate directly with this chairman as well. So basically, the shareholders are aware about what is happening with the company. The company is also basically the company can also convey what they need to the shareholders as well by having this basically executive as the head of the board of directors, right? As the chairman of the board of directors. And in a crisis, by having this chairman, right, there is no confusion on who should lead. Whether if there is a crisis, should the CEO lead, all right, and resolve the crisis, or should the chairman of the board of directors lead and resolve this crisis? So there is no confusion, right? Because the executive director would be the chairman of the board of directors. Okay. Um, so, of course, under stewardship, right, it requires the COO to be trustworthy and be willing to put the personal gains aside, so not fulfill the self-interest, but put in the effort for the benefit of the organization and the shareholders, right? So does not stress on individualism, but basically the role of management as stewards, all right, and to try and meet the goals of the company, right, and make sure that the company is successful, and also the shareholders would also benefit then, right? So generally, these stewards are motivated in order to make the company successful, because they also feel satisfied when the company is successful. So they know that they have been effective, right? So this is the main idea of stewardship theory. Okay, so do you have any questions up to this point? Are you okay so far?
Okay, madam.
All right, okay. So please understand the difference or the distinction between this theory and agency theory. All right. So agency theory basically managers are motivated by self-interest. Here, the managers are stewards, and they will perform accordingly, effectively, on the for the shareholders' behalf. All right. So this is stewardship theory. Correct. Now, resource dependence theory, basically, when we talk about resource dependency, is the reliance of the company on resources, right? On the resources. So these resources can be internal, external, all right? For example, capital, uh, the labor, materials, any resources can be used by the company in order to uh, um, kind of benefit the company, right? So this is the main idea of resource dependence theory, right? So including the board of directors, right? The board of directors can also be a resource to the company and help the company to achieve the company's goals, right? Because the board of directors, the directors, including the non-executive directors, they have their own advantage. They bring in certain advantage to the company. So it creates, these directors create linkages, creates networking with the external parties. All right. And basically, the company can benefit from these networks that the directors have, or the non-executive directors have, with the external parties, right? Whether it's environment, whether it is the government organizations, whether it is with regulators, right? Whatever it is, these non-executive directors bring, or the directors bring, when if they have these networks, then it is beneficial for the company. Okay, so you can see that this resource dependency theory states that board members who are professionals can use their expertise to train and to provide advice, right? Mentor the management, right? In relation to organizational performance and so on, right? Then, as mentioned just now, board members, all right, can also use their networks to benefit the company, right? And these directors could have environmental linkages as well. Again, networking, all right, and with regulators, with say even maybe environmental groups and so on, right? And by having good communications, good networking with these various parties, then it could reduce transaction costs, it could reduce a kind of regulatory costs faced by the company in relation to environmental matters, as well as uh, 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 reliance on, let's say, the uh, outside parties as well, reliance on the uh, environment, as well as other parties. All right. So generally, the main idea is that the directors and the particularly non-executive directors, if they have good networking with various parties, whatever these outside external parties are, all right, these the company can use advantage of these networks that these directors, board of directors have, right? So as mentioned just now, the main idea is the board of directors themselves, right, are a resource to the company. So therefore, that's why it is important to have diversity on the board of directors, because if there is diversity on the board of directors, then the company has have diverse resources, right, that they can utilize to benefit the company. All right. So this is resource dependence theory. All right. Do you have any questions up to this point? Because generally, if you notice, there are only four theories that you have to know. Agency theory you have gone through, stakeholder theory you have gone through. All right. Then briefly, we talked about stewardship theory and resource dependence theory. Okay. Do you have any questions up to this point? Are you okay?
Okay, madam.
All right, okay. You're all very quiet. I am a bit worried on whether you are actually able to focus, right? Okay. All right. Now, since this is the last topic, I was trying to cover the whole topic today, all right, so that I can kind of explain to you the coverage for the final exam. Okay, so please take note that uh, you have one topic on ethics, right? This is the last topic on ethics, which is ethics in business and the workplace, which includes also the MIA bylaws, right? So please remember that this topic is included in your final exam. The other topics in relation to ethics, right, in relation to ethical philosophers and so on, is no longer included for your final exam, right? We have covered it in your midterm exam. It will not come out again for your final exam, right? Only topic 4 is covered for your final exam. Then another important topic for your final exam is MCCG 2021. Definitely any mini cases or any questions that you have to answer in relation to corporate governance is in relation to MCCG 2021. That's why I asked you to summarize MCCG 2021, right? Then another question, which will be basically there will be a question on is the corporate governance theories that we covered today, right? So basically, you know that there will be questions in relation to this number 1, number 3, and number 5, all right? For number 2 and 4, all right, the development of corporate governance internationally and locally, all right, you do not have to go through the developments, the Hempel report and the combined report in the UK, and then the developments in Malaysia even, all right. That is for you to be aware about, so that you appreciate MCCG 2021. If you even include it as well, it will be included as to support your answer for just to support, all right, in support of your explanation, right? Basically, it will not be the main answer, right? So generally, the questions will not come out on this development of corporate governance internationally and locally, right? There will be no questions on it. If you know it, right, you are aware about it, yeah, okay, fine, that is good. So that if you need to further explain or elaborate in answering the questions that come out, you can use the explanation from here, and also in relation to regulatory bodies, right? So that's why I've put it in brackets, right? These will only be as supporting explanations, right? It will not be there. You will not be asked specific questions on this development or the regulatory bodies, right? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Do you have any questions on this?
Not from me.
Sorry, I can only hear one person, one student answering. So I am worried. I am concerned about what happened to the other 33 of you. Are you okay so far?
Okay, madam. So far, no question.
Okay, so no questions? You understand? All right. That basically you need to know about ethics in the workplace, all right, or business environment, and the MIA bylaws, right? You need to know about MCCG 2021, and basically you need to know about the theories, at least the main issues about the theories that we covered today, right? Because there will be questions on it. The rest of it basically is for you to just appreciate, and then if you know about the or you have some additional facts, then you can include it in part as part of your explanation, right? If you want to, right? It's not necessary. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
madam.
Okay.
Okay,
All
madam.
right. Okay. All right. So all right. Okay. Now I want you to finish because this is the last topic. All right. On Thursday, I'm not going to have a class with you. I would like you to start revising, right, for your final exam. because that's why I had to show you what are the topics that are covered. All right, so that next week when we have revision class, you can ask me any questions that you need to ask. We will try and have one group exercise to apply this MCCG 2021 to past year questions, as well as to, as I said, we will look at an actual corporate governance report. Okay, so please revise before we have the revision class next week, right? So I am giving you time, this Thursday, class time, to revise individually, or if you prefer to revise and discuss in your own groups, all right, please do so. Take this time to revise. So if there are any issues, then you can discuss it. All right, and I will see if I am able to share a past exam question with you, a past semester exam question with you, so that perhaps you can discuss it in advance. All right, if you want to, right? If I am able to, because I have to first find it and compile it. Right. So if I can, I will do so. If not, please just revise these topics, discuss, and try and recall back. All right. And then if you have any questions, then we can clarify in next week's class. So are you okay with that?
Okay,
Yes,
madam.
madam.
Okay,
All
madam.
right. Okay, fine. Okay. So if you have no other questions, then I will just share the attendance form for today. Okay. So, all right. Let me try and share the form or in the chat box. All right. So if you have no questions, please make sure that you fill in this your metric number. All right, in this form, just to record your attendance. All right. Okay. Then inshallah, we will have this revision class next week. All right, Tuesday and Thursday. Um, okay, normally revision classes are voluntary. You do not have to attend. I assume that if you are not you do not attend the revision classes, that means you are revising on your own, right? So please take note, this Thursday you revise on your own. All right, next Tuesday and Thursday we will have revision class. All right, but it's not compulsory for you to attend the revision class. Of course, I have to let you know two things. Number one is that I will be covering the structure of the final exam, all right, in one of the revision classes next week. And also, I will not be recording the revision classes, all right? So please bear in mind that the revision classes will not be recorded, okay? So you are also free to ask anything you want, all right? And then I will answer it, all right, to clarify in preparation for your final exam. Okay. Um, is there anything else you want to ask before I let you go today?
Madam, are you going to post the past recordings?
Yes, yes, I am. I am. Sorry. Yes, I have to compile them first, but I will be uploading the past recordings. Right? Yeah. Okay. So I have to kind of find out first where I stop uploading. All right, and then inshallah I'll compile and I will upload all the past recordings. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
madam.
you. I
Thank
better write
you.
it down because I am so forgetful nowadays. Right? So busy, so forgetful. All right? Okay. Right?
Madam,
Yes.
are you will post the MCCG notes?
Yes, I will as well. Thank you. That's what I just recalled just before your class, that I did not upload the MCCG slides yet. Okay, so I will do that as well. All right. So past recording, all right, plus MCCG slides, plus today's slides as well. MCCG slides, and plus slides for this topic, last topic, topic 5. All right. Okay, so inshallah, I will try and upload all of this before your Thursday's class, inshallah. Okay.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so inshallah, I will see you. For those of you who want to attend the revision class, inshallah, I'll see you next week. All right. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Assalamualaikum. Please
Salam.
make sure
Thank you,
you
madam.
fill in the form.
Salam.
Thank
Okay.
Thank
you,
you, madam.
All
madam.
right. Thank you. Yeah. Please fill in the form
Thank
before
you,
you leave.
madam.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
madam.
Thank
madam.
you. Assalamualaikum. Bye. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Madam,
Yes.
yang stewardship tadi tu kan, madam.
Sorry.
Saya
Sorry. Sorry, brother Ahmad. Yeah. Sorry again.
yang stewardship teori tu kan, madam.
Stewardship. Okay. Stewardship.
Uh,
Okay. Stewardship. Yeah.
stewardship. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. Macam chairman tu kan, madam. Dia like the one that become the board director sekali Saya macam
Oh, they didn't say that CEO must be chairman, but they said executive. That means it's part of management who has to be chairman, right?
oh,
And so, but generally we would assume the CEO would then lead the board, I think, right? Because he is the leader, he's the head of top management, kan? So the CEO generally will become chairman of the board.
hmm,
Okay, so that for stewardship, this is what they are stating. Of course, in our real MCCG, this is discouraged.
hmm.
Okay.
Sebab dia tak like independent macam tu kan, madam.
It's yeah, there won't be independent monitoring.
Hmm. Oh, madam,
Yes.
ni mungkin soalan dia childish sikit, tapi apa function chairman, madam? Saya macam dari dulu tak faham.
Sorry, again.
What's
Function the chairman, is it?
yeah.
Okay. So basically, I can understand. Basically, the chairman, you can say that he is supposed to be the independent, a person who will lead the or head the board of directors. Because now, if you notice in the latest MCCG requirements, MCCG 2021, at least half of the board must be independent or
Yeah.
non-executive directors, right? Independent directors, and also or majority must be independent directors, right? So they are getting somebody experienced who is also an independent director to head the board meetings and so on, right? In some companies, the non-executive directors are the majority, so the executive directors are the minority on the board.
Hmm.
Okay,
Oh,
and you saw as well when we discussed MCCG 2021, when executive directors are part of the board. So whether CEO or other executive directors are also part of the board, then these non-executive directors have to meet separately at least once a year. Okay, so it means that the board generally has to be relatively independent to monitor the executive directors or the management. So they're just having one person, normally experienced person, to be the let's say chairperson. Right, when there's the meeting, he is the chairperson. He will head the board. He will make sure the agenda is set. He will work with the company secretary. Company secretary will advise him, right? This is him or her, that this is the agenda for this meeting. You have to
Mm.
raise these issues and so on and discuss it. So, like a chairperson of a meeting.
Oh,
Okay.
alright.
All right.
So,
Okay.
Madam, as tadi tu the whole thing is related to the chairman, Madam.
Which whole thing is related to the chairman?
Yang Madam cakap yang kena tahu secretary
The
pasal.
company secretary will basically, of course, will discuss, will tell the chairman, all
Oh,
right, that these are the issues that is occurring in the company. This
mm,
is what you have to discuss. All right. It will also carry on from the minutes of the previous meeting.
mm,
Right? Generally, there will be minutes of the previous meeting, and then this chairman will raise the issues again. If it's resolved, then no longer need to raise it again. But if it's unresolved, the chairman will have to raise it again, and then try and resolve it, all right, amongst this board of directors.
oh, alright.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
All
Madam.
right. Okay. Welcome.
Madam lagi satu, Madam.
Yeah. 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 Sure.
Madam cakap tadi kan yang 50% is independent kan, tapi dia tak, dia supposedly executive ke non-executive lah? Saya tak ingat sangat.
Okay. Independent is definitely non-executive directors, right?
Madam,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
kalau macam tu kan Madam, kan like macam previously I cari the case macam most of the corporate governance failure is because the director do not know what happened in the company. Kan macam like benda tu kan
Yeah.
boleh jadi happen ke Madam?
And so that's why okay, so this is the issue, right? Now they are supposed to be more kind of like um uh uh because the issue is, okay, executive directors are definitely non-independent, right? Because they are part of management of the company. They receive salary from the company, right? For non-executive directors, if you remember, there are two parts. Non-executive director, they can be independent, or they can be non-executive directors but they are not independent, right?
Mm,
Because somehow or other they have some relationship with the company.
mm,
Either they are spouse or of spouse, or they are related to the top management, family member of top management, or they are connected somehow to the company. Okay, so here, whatever it is, if it's non-executive directors, they are outside the company. They are not part of management of the company. So whether they are independent or not, the issue is that they may not be fully aware about what is happening within in the company. So
mm,
that's why now the corporate governance requirements, especially the latest one after 2017, 2017, 2021, all require the directors to know their really and fully
oh,
understand their roles and responsibilities. So if they need to, that's why they have to attend
oh,
additional training. Okay.
faham.
Because if not, they uh, now the penalties to fail their responsibility, the director's responsibility, can be not only a hefty fine, can also be jail term.
Mm,
So so very serious, right? So that is the issue.
alright.
Understand, all right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Anything
Madam.
else, Brother Ahmad?
So far,
Okay.
maybe I will read the MCCG first and then maybe I will ask later.
Okay, very good. All right. Yeah,
Alright.
but good that you raise all these questions, right? Clarify now. All right.
Macam,
Then when you revise, you are clearer. Right.
mm,
And then after that, if you have any further questions, you can ask next week's. Okay,
alright.
next week as well. All right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Bye.
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 Madam,
Yes.
I would like to ask a question, extension to Brother Ahmad Imran said that regarding the chairman, right? So can
Right.
I know what is the rationale? Because from my personal reading, I
Uh-huh.
see lots of large company having the same presence of chairman and also the CEO. May I know what's the
Okay.
rationale of having the same person?
All right. Okay. So, okay. First of all, you have to just check when was this? All right. When was this? Was it recently? Is it in Malaysia, or when exactly did you see this? All right. Because, yes. All right. So, just like as mentioned just now, under stewardship theory, the rationale to have one person as the chairman of the board and possibly the CEO is that if there's any crisis, any decisions, the executive is aware about it, and then he or she is the one who is leading the board. Right, so that is the, of course, the rationale for having one person. Right, um, and some people, companies say that because the executive knows what is happening in the company, so they are more effective, right? But the other issue is that in corporate governance, the main issue is we want to ensure that the uh, the the shareholders' interests are protected, all right? And in order to ensure that the shareholders' interests are protected, we, of course, okay, let's say if you are a shareholder and I'm a shareholder, generally I would feel I would can rely more on an independent party to monitor the management, right? So since the CEO is the head of management, then it seems strange that we have a board that is supposed to be monitoring the management, but the head of that board is all an executive director, is the CEO, right? So then we will say, well, then how independent is this board who is supposed to be monitoring the management, right? So maybe I would say that, well, would feel better if the board is headed by an independent director as well. You understand, right? So that's why there
Yes.
is this, the corporate governance regulations now basically require that the CEO and the chairman must be two separate people. Okay.
Okay, understood.
All right. Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Any other
madam.
questions, Sister Haslin?
So far, no, but
All right.
later maybe, madam.
Yes, please. Right. Once you go through, once you have revised, then if you have any issue, please raise it in the next class. All right. So this very good questions, right? So that others can also appreciate it. All right.
Okay. Thank you,
All
madam, for
right.
clearing.
Okay. Thank you. Good. Assalamualaikum. Bye.
Bye bye.